After Paul Giamatti's Star Trek villain comment, I'm convinced he's the Khan replacement the franchise has needed for 43 years. For over 4 decades, Star Trek has lived in the shadow of its greatest villain, Khan Noonien Singh. Played with volcanic charisma by Ricardo Montalban in Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan, the genetically engineered tyrant set a gold standard for sci-fi antagonists: intelligent, theatrical, tragic, and terrifying. Since 1982, Star Trek has tried, time and again, to recreate that same level of gravitas in its villains, with limited success. From Shinzen to Nero to crawl to a reimagined Khan by Benedict Cumberbatch, none have truly filled Khan's outsized boots. But now, in the most unexpected twist, it might finally happen. And the man to do it? Paul Giamatti. After a recent viral interview in which Giamatti professed his love for Star Trek and expressed a strong desire to play a villain in the franchise, fans, myself included, couldn't stop imagining the possibilities. Giamatti didn't just say he liked Star Trek, he sounded like a lifelong fan who has been waiting for this call his entire career. And here's the thing, if Star Trek truly wants to deliver a villain worthy of Khan in this new era, Paul Giamatti is the actor who can do it. Here's why. 1. Giamatti has the gravitas, and that's non-negotiable. The success of Khan came down to more than just the script, it was Ricardo Montalban's presence. He made you believe that Khan was both a cultured intellectual and a deadly adversary. That blend of Shakespearean authority and lethal rage is rare. Giamatti, however, exudes that same kind of commanding energy in his best roles. Think of his turn in John Adams. He radiated leadership, insecurity, and ideological conviction in equal measure. Or in Billions, where his performance as Chuck Rhodes proved he could weaponize intellect and emotion at the same time. Giamatti can carry a monologue, dominate a scene, and project menace without raising his voice. That's the kind of power Star Trek villains need, not explosions or CGI, but presence. Gravitas. Wait. 2. He's a Trek fan, and that changes everything. Let's not underestimate this. Giamatti's desire to join the Star Trek universe isn't just about career advancement or a paycheck. He loves it. He knows the texture of the stories, the philosophy, the tone. In that same interview, he said he'd do anything to play a villain in the franchise. That passion matters. A lot. Star Trek often suffers when its villains are portrayed by actors who don't really get the tone. When a performer leans too hard into action movie tropes or cartoonish evil, it breaks the moral and intellectual balance that the franchise relies on. Giamatti, on the other hand, understands Trek's unique alchemy of science fiction, morality play, and theatrical drama. That means his performance would likely enhance the story rather than undercut it. 3. Giamatti brings layers like Khan always had. Khan wasn't just a bad guy. He was a survivor, a man who had lost everything, betrayed by Kirk, exiled to a dying planet, and driven mad by grief. That's what made him tragic. Star Trek's best villains are those with understandable motivations, villains whose actions reflect a distorted but painfully human response to suffering or injustice. Giamatti thrives on complexity. He lives in those in-between emotional spaces. He doesn't play villains like caricatures, he plays them as real people warped by obsession, insecurity, or trauma. Imagine Giamatti as a former Starfleet admiral who lost faith in the Federation, or a brilliant alien scientist whose species was wiped out by accidental human intervention. You don't just watch Giamatti's characters, you wrestle with them. And that's exactly what Trek needs. 4. He can tap into that operatic rage. Let's be real, a great Trek villain needs to go big. Not cartoon big, but opera big. There needs to be righteous fury. Speeches that echo across the stars. Theatrical vendettas. This isn't Marvel or Star Wars, this is Star Trek, where logic and passion often clash at warp speed. Paul Giamatti is one of the few actors working today who can pull that off. Just watch Sideways, Barney's Version, or even his smaller roles in Shoot 'Em Up or The Amazing Spider-Man 2. Giamatti has that rare ability to erupt on screen, volcanic, explosive, but still human. Imagine a scene where Giamatti's villain confronts a captain across a view screen, shaking with fury, tears in his eyes, quoting ancient Earth philosophers as he delivers a veiled death threat. He'd own it. He'd make it unforgettable. 5. Giamatti is timeless, and so should the next con be. One of the issues with newer Trek villains is that they feel like products of their time. Shinzen was late 90s edginess. Nero was pure 2000s blockbuster brawn. Benedict Cumberbatch's Khan was, well, he was more of a Sherlock episode than a Trek nemesis. These characters didn't feel timeless, they felt trendy. Giamatti is timeless. He doesn't chase cool, he defines it on his own terms. His villains wouldn't need techie suits, planet-destroying weapons, or edgy haircuts. He would embody menace through dialogue, ideology, and expression. That's what Khan did. That's what Trek villains should do. 6. There's still a Khan-sized hole in Trek lore. It's been 43 years since the Wrath of Khan, and Trek still hasn't given us a villain who reshaped the franchise the way Khan did. Even the Abrams-verse retooling of Khan with Cumberbatch fell flat. Despite being genetically engineered, he lacked the theatrical depth, the raw fury, and the poetic edge of Montalban's portrayal. A Giamatti villain wouldn't be a literal Khan clone, please, let's not do that again, but he could be a spiritual successor. Someone who rivals the captain, whether it's Picard, Burnham, Pike, or a new face, not just in force, but in intellect and philosophy. Someone who can challenge the Federation's ideals, tempt the audience with half-truths, and break hearts along the way. Giamatti wouldn't replace Khan. He'd evolve him. 7. Trek is entering a bold new era, and it needs a villain worthy of it. With strange new worlds thriving, Section 31 finally happening, and more Star Trek on the way, the franchise is entering a golden age of expansion. But it needs anchors. And a villain like Giamatti's could be a unifying force. Imagine if Giamatti's character was introduced in a movie or miniseries, but then his legacy ripples across shows. He could be a recurring antagonist, a mythic figure referenced in multiple timelines. Trek has done that with heroes like Spock and Picard, but never with a villain since Khan. Giamatti could be that shared thread. He could become the name spoken in hushed tones across quadrants. 8. He's a genre chameleon, sci-fi is his playground. Let's not forget, Giamatti is no stranger to science fiction. From Paycheck to The Illusionist to The Truman Show, he's dipped into genre often, and always with nuance. He's not afraid of weirdness, of big ideas, of science as metaphor. That's crucial for a Trek villain who isn't just meant to oppose the heroes physically, but intellectually. Whether he plays a time traveler obsessed with altering history, or an ancient alien who views humanity as a failed experiment, Giamatti could sell it. He brings plausibility to the implausible, and that's science fiction's biggest hurdle. 9. He's not the obvious choice, and that's the point. Star Trek works best when it surprises you. Patrick Stewart wasn't an obvious choice for a starship captain. Leonard Nimoy's Vulcan logic was a risk. Even Ricardo Montalban as Khan was considered a gamble until it paid off in Interstellar Gold. Paul Giamatti is not the first name you think of for a space villain. But that's what makes it genius. He would disarm the audience with vulnerability, then turn on a dime into terror. He would remind us that the scariest villains aren't warlords or mad scientists, they're people. People with a cause. People with loss. People with conviction. Final thought. Paul Giamatti deserves to break the Federation. Star Trek needs a new Khan not because of nostalgia, but because of balance. For the Federation to thrive, it needs to be